Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week where I, the Hoodrat Strategist, come across your radio airwaves and tell you what is really going on. Get past all of the propaganda and the clowning and the foolishness of the mainstream media and cut through the dense forests of BS. This is a weekly program where we discuss news, politics, local activism, and political strategy. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, we've got a little bit of good news coming into this week. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh my goodness, Trump care is dead, or the AHCA, but I don't know. For my part, I am hesitant to go dancing in the streets. Last time this happened, it reared its ugly head. You know, the AHCA, it's kind of like a slasher villain. Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the doctor without going into crippling medical debt. Trump Care Part 3. But no, yes, be on the lookout, especially around Friday the 13th. The American Health Care Act might come back on with a hockey mask to go after all of our people with pre-existing conditions and whatnot. And, of course, Jason or Freddie never gave billions of dollars to the rich. Although that's a good idea for a slasher villain. Be very timely. Any Hollywood writer out there, you go ahead. You can steal that idea if you'd like. A little bit of political sci-fi horror, If you need something timely, by the way, I'd highly recommend checking out John Carpenter's They Live. Anyway. Okay, it is cause for at least a little bit of, pat yourselves on the back if you've been out there in the streets or making the phone calls to your senators and your congressmen for putting the brakes on this, because this would have been a very devastating bill. And, we've talked on the show, we criticize Obamacare a lot. It's basically a tangled web of for-profit insurance companies that is, it's essentially a system that can be very harmful for small businesses economically, and also for poorer people on the spectrum. I was never a fan at all of the mandate. I feel like, so you're going to financially penalize the poorest people in the country who literally can't afford a healthcare plan. So, but, the ACA is better than the AHCA. The ACA, of course, was a conservative healthcare plan to begin with. Mitt Romney created it for his state back in the day when he was governor. So, we're at this juncture right now where AHC has been defeated, and, especially at a time where the Republicans control, two branches of government, and they have the majority in the Supreme Court. So, or at least, wield power and wield majority power in all three branches of government. So it really goes to show the kind of people power that we have. And I will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like one of my co-hosts is outside, so I need to go let him in. I will be right back. Hello, I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. My dear friend Luke is going to hop in just a sec. So we were just having a discussion about the AHCA. Bring you up to speed. I compared it to a slasher villain that keeps coming back from the dead. And
You got to actually turn my mic on.
Yeah, I know this.
But yes, no, you're not wrong. The AHCA is the new Republican zombie that keeps on keeping on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But so how do you feel about it, though? I was kind of telling people I'm still kind of wary, but it's
about the bill as a whole, or like
just where we're at
with it.
Yeah,
where we're at with the fact that Republicans have spent the solid last 8 years stumping on how Obamacare is terrible because because they don't really have a good reason. Well, it costs people things. I don't know. It's terrible. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the ACA in that I don't think it goes far enough in the direction of, people actually having health care.
Yep, that's true. It does not cover everyone, and for a lot of people, it can be a financial burden.
But Republicans are hashing on, and this is the part that is not in the local, or not local, the mainstream narrative. The mainstream narrative continuously neglects to mention that the PPACA, or at least the ACA part, was a Republican idea. It was a Heritage Foundation idea. The Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank. It was first implemented by Mitt Romney in Massachusetts to great, effect. Actually, people liked it over there when they implemented it. And when they implemented Obamacare nationally, most people, despite the best propagandic effort from Republicans, most people do actually like the Patient Protection and Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare. So Republicans have been, this whole hate train about the ACA has been the Republicans being salty about the fact that the Democrats passed their health care bill.
Yeah, pretty much.
And them wanting the Democrats to concede more in it than the Democrats wanted, which is ridiculous because it was a Republican plan in the first place. So they've finally admitted, we don't have anything. If we can't get the AHCA passed, we're just going to get rid of Obamacare because we don't have anything. They've literally admitted to spending the last 8 years railing against a program and a law that their side wrote, only to go, we don't have anything better. Because literally the better things than, like, the better plan over the ACA is literally a single payer system, a Medicare for all system, a socialized healthcare system, whatever you want to call it. A single payer government run healthcare system is one of the only options left after we take a look at how much we've conceded to the private healthcare and the private healthcare insurance industry. So, really, the question needs to stop being, do people deserve health care? I think we all agree that people deserve health care. The question I think that people really need to ask themselves is, do private insurance companies need to exist? Because that's the real fight, is health insurance companies, which is really hilarious when you talk about it and consider the fact that almost all of the insurance companies are against the American Health Care Act.
Yeah.
So really we're looking at what at least I see to be an obsolete immoral system that exists to turn a profit on sick people, being against I'm pretty sure they're only against the AHCA because it literally kills off their profit base.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these insurance companies, they had kind of a more cold and calculating, or a colder calculus to begin with. I mean, if we're going to be having a discussion about what is actually in the interest of the American people, of having a decent healthcare system, it's been proven time and time again in other countries, a universal healthcare system where you take the profit motive out of the system, that works. And I've seen even like devil's advocate. I've seen certain libertarian talking points. They'll poke holes in like problems with like the Britain's healthcare system, or so on and so forth, and
they look really hard for those holes, though.
They do. And if you compare it, like, yes, any system is going to have problems, but is it still fundamentally better than what we have in the United States? Yes, it is.
When you take a look at the straight compare contrast of the American healthcare system and a single payer system in literally almost every industrialized nation in the world, the straight compare contrast has socialized medicine as more effective and cheaper when the control of how it is doled out is centralized. And like, it's one of those things where this is kind of how I see government fitting into how society plays out. And this is government's role in society. Government's role in society is to provide public goods. I believe that is a government responsibility, is to dole out public goods. So parks, we've deemed parks a public good. Preserving nature is a public good. We've decided that education is a public good. We have free public education up through 12th grade, and the push for free higher education just like really started to gain ground in America thanks to Bernie Sanders in 2016. We've decided that citizen safety is important, which is why the police are funded by the government. They're quote unquote free. The government pays the police. We've decided that fire safety is a public good. The government provides fire safety. So when we're talking about health and safety, well, we've got the safety part down, but we've struggled to catch up with the health side of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how there's such an overwhelming public consensus for the idea of single payer. Overwhelming majority of Democrats support it. Independents support it. Republicans...
The last time I looked at Republicans, it was something like 54, 58%, which is still a majority of Republicans.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not in the 50s, but it's definitely in the high 40s.
I mean, I saw a survey that was about 35%, which is a little over one-third. But, that's still very high.
All you have to do, honestly, I'm sorry. If you are a conservative and you describe yourself as a fiscal conservative, just if you're on the no single payer healthcare train, if you're a fiscal conservative, I need you guys to maybe look at this argument from a fiscally conservative standpoint, because by far America has the most expensive healthcare system per person in the world.
That's true, and that's because people do not seek preventative care. They'll only go to the doctor if it's an emergency or they're in the late stages of a preventable disease.
Yeah. Being sick is expensive. Keeping people healthy is cheap.
Yep. And that's part of the reason why, too, like a lot of people, well, look at these upfront costs. They're going to be tremendous. It's like, yeah, but if you look at it in the long term, it's going to save us billions and billions of dollars in the long run. I
mean, you're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry to cut in.
But no, just to cap that off, we're talking about, like, initially, the initial investment in it is going to come from revenue sources that should already be generating us revenue to begin with. Most people have talked about just closing, tax loopholes for the rich. This idea that single payer or Medicare for all is going to be somehow prohibitively expensive is simply not true.
Oh, don't forget about the wait times. The horrible wait times that we will inevitably suffer as people have to wait in line to... No, it's called triage. Like, wait times are already a thing in America. Your wait times are... But instead of wait times being dictated on patient need and severity, like it should be, it is wait times are dictated by how much money you have in your bank account.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love my new coworkers. Shout out to them who may be listening. I love my new coworkers. The new environment I'm working in is far more conservative than I'm used to working in, and I've been, testing the waters, trying to have discussions with my older conservative coworkers. And they so far have been repeating some points like wait times. Canadians and Europeans come to America to have their health care because it's so good. These points, while factual, miss the fact that the people who come to America for treatment, because our medical technology is actually on the bleeding edge. We are a bleeding edge medical technology country. It's up there. So in a sense, we do have the best healthcare system because we have the most current and best technology to carry out these treatments. But if that's the only marker of best we have, well, we're skewing it against people who can't afford to come to America to have cutting-edge procedures done to them or what have you.
So, that's kind of talking about access. So, when they talk about these people who fly in to America to get these treatments, well, is that same treatment going to be accessible to, your average hood rat or, rural country folk or somebody who's unemployed or on the streets?
Shout out to our rednecks out there.
Yeah. Redneck Revolt, by the way.
Yeah.
Check that out. It's just a shout out. But no, again, that ties back into, economic inequality, because not all care is equal. And, you have these technologies that are available, but they're only available for the wealthy. And at the expense of that, people at the bottom of the income ladder have to forego basic medical treatment because it is cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
And it usually includes a lot of the people making that talking point.
Yeah. On my way over here, I sort of mused on the irony that I sort of dislike political punditry on my way over to a show where all we do is political punditry.
Oh yeah, but
it's just it's not partisan hackery. That's the difference.
Yeah. It's, I'd say the difference is we try to have in-depth discussions about
things that we should have in-depth discussions about.
Yeah.
Like we can't boil politics. I think one of the things that has kept American politics from actually moving forward, from people coming together and addressing the issues that we all actually care about, is because we've got this media environment where everything needs to be boiled down to
a soundbite. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sound bites. Politics can't be done in sound bites.
Sometimes they're really catchy, but they like
Love Trump's hate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's a good example. Like on the right side of the aisle. So I've mentioned that show. I have some respect for Rand Paul. I think his ideas on healthcare are wrong, but they're mischaracterized. Like he is about medical. He wants medical vouchers, so he still wants private insurance. But I think he's got a legitimate aim to make it easier for poor people to have access to health care. There's that discussion where he's like talking about a system where it could be as affordable as like $1 a day. But, most, I'll see this video fly around the internet by like, Occupy Democrats or something. They'll use that rather silly statement where he's talking about, well, if you're a doctor, does that mean the government can just beat down your door and come into your home and kidnap you? And,
you have a right to treatment, huh? So you have a right to my time, huh? So you have a right to my livelihood, huh?
Yeah. Admittedly, that is a very ridiculous and hyperbolic analogy to make. But, it's not necessarily fair because he's actually, at least Rand Paul, not a lot of the Republicans seem to just be like, screw poor people, more money for us. But, he did have actually like some nuanced ideas about it.
I mean, I can at least respect where Rand Paul is coming from. Even though, like, I just can't with that guy. It's just, I don't know. Healthcare is screwy. They're probably never going to pass the AHCA. Like, Republicans control both the House, the Senate, and they have the presidency, and they can't pass their own healthcare law.
So, just kind of capping off this discussion, we talk about New Deal Grandpa a lot on the show, and he said something kind of interesting. I don't know if you noticed his he's been kind of dialing it back, being a little bit more incrementalist about single payer. Actually, I'll read like a recent quote from him. He says, "What we need to do now, among other things, lower the cost of prescription drugs, save consumers, save the government substantial sums of money. What we need to do is provide for a public option in every state in the country. What we need to do is lower the cost, lower Medicare eligibility from 65 to 55, and then begin the process of doing what every other major country on earth is doing, that is guaranteeing health care as a right, Medicare for all, single-payer program." And I think, like, people need to understand there's a difference between a public option and single payer. Problem is, if you'd have the public option without having a single payer system, basically the insurance companies will exist alongside that public option, and the insurance companies will be incentivized to put all the sickest people in the public option and keep all the healthy young people in their plans, so that basically there's not a very strong financial infrastructure to help out the people who actually need that care.
Yeah, it's the again, and it's why I believe for-profit healthcare insurance is an amoral and immoral system that we should honestly, as a society, probably not allow to exist, because that kind of action where you make it cost prohibitive to cover sick people, forcing them onto a public option that might be underfunded because a lot of those sick people do tend to be poor or poorer, living near, at, or below the poverty line. And keeping younger, healthier people who can afford that kind of coverage is, it's simple profiteering. It's low risk, high reward, cash money in the pocket. I think as far as that quote goes, I don't think it sounds like he's scaling it back, but really what it sounds like is the goal of a Medicare for all system is still there. And I think this is a result of the 2016 election and Bernie continuing to lay the groundwork for a potential 2020 run, is that pragmatism that people hit Bernie on for a long time during the primary. Well, he's not pragmatic. We can't just go straight to a single-payer healthcare system. We have to take it in steps. We have to have a plan. This is showing that Bernie Sanders has a plan, and this is one way to enact a plan to single-payer healthcare system, or a Medicare for all system. And I think people are going to be pointing back at it in a couple years, especially if he does open up a bid to run in 2020.
That's true. I mean, I guess my main concern is, I really feel like 2018, the Democrats, if they have any chance to take back the House, it's really going to depend on how aspirational their platform is, especially with like healthcare. It's kind of an opportunity for them. Mm-hmm. It's
scaling. I agree. Scaling back the rhetoric to sort of like play it soft with that issue is probably not the smartest move going into 2018. I think healthcare is an issue that the Democrats need to be attacking viciously. They need to be proposing plans. They need to be they're small. They don't have control in either the House or the Senate, which means they have to be way more annoying than they actually are.
Yeah.
And they're not nearly annoying enough. They're not hounding on the points that are popular with their constituency. And this is, and again, I think this is mismanagement from party leadership. They're continuing to focus on being the resistors, being the anti-Trumps, being against Trump, and playing that we're against them rhetoric. It's an us versus them divisive rhetoric that has been plaguing our politics for a long time. Red team, blue team BS. That needs to stop. They need to stop being the party that is against the Republicans. They need to stop running like they're the party that is going to run against someone. They need to be the party that runs for something, which is how Obama won in 2008 handily. Right. Mm-hmm. We voted for Obama because Obama had that message. His campaign had the message that he was something we could vote for. He was something we could move. He had a plan that we could move towards. In 2012, that was a little reduced because, we had one government shutdown on behalf of Republicans after 2010. Mm-hmm. The partisan obstruction of pretty much everything Obama tried to do domestically. It was just a bad time. People were tired of him. At the end of the 4 years, the partisan propaganda against Obama was ridiculous. And this is not to say that Obama does not have flaws and that he should not be criticized, because he does and he should be. Mm-hmm. But as far as talking about successful Democratic candidates, you should have people running whom you can vote for.
Yeah, and adding on that, to be a little more critical towards Obama, that messaging campaign, which is very similar to Bernie's too, that's what works. But you also need to understand, I think Democrats need to be a little bit more self-critical, and they need to be willing to criticize where Obama effed up, where he broke some promises.
We have two parties who are not self-reflective at all. No. Neither party is self-reflective at all. Neither party looks at themselves when they make a mistake or when they lose big.
Well, I would actually argue the Republicans are a bit better at that, at least from a strategic point of view. After the 2012, they had a big look in the mirror, and they made an extensive report on here is what happened. Here are some strategies that we need to take.
And then they went full Tea Party.
Yeah, full Tea Party.
So, it's. I mean, I guess I suppose that's an argument against self-reflection if you really want to take it that way, but I think that self-reflection turned into a result that again had the focus of beating Democrats and not necessarily having the country's best interests.
Oh, well, yeah,
at heart,
definitely.
And that's really that needs to be the main focus of any kind of self-reflection, is what are we doing that is best for the country? This is the whole ask not for what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, that whole bit. That's kind of what we need, and it's what we don't have.
There's really only a handful of people in Congress in both parties that actually, that's their question. Most of them, it's how do I help the party or how do I help my donors? Those are the two most important questions. And how do I do enough to make sure my constituents don't vote me out of office? All right, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in their Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, be right back. Gonna do a quick bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get back to some political discussion. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about a story next that is, it's the personal, it's the political, and it's a rare time where, like, national foreign policy and local news really converge in a real not so good way. Nah, it's just not at all. For those of you who aren't aware, so there's this young man who was planning to attend Western Michigan University, and he is in prison right now with the Saudi government. And I'll read a little bit from the article. Reprieve, an organization that represents people charged with the death penalty worldwide, started a petition to stop the imminent beheading of Mujtaba'a al-Sweikat and 13 other Saudis since the death for attending pro-democracy rallies in 2011. Campaigns and digital officer Georgia O'Brien posted on the Kalamazoo Reddit page Monday morning seeking members of student organizations at Western Michigan University. It calls on Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to stop the executions. More than 12,500 signatures were collected as of 3 p.m. on July 17th. WMU spokeswoman Cheryl Rowland said she was made aware of the situation Sunday morning. Al-Sweikat, he was admitted to WMU in 2013. He planned to study finance, but he was arrested at the airport before entering the United States. So, Rowland said Western has urged unnamed critical national political figures with influence to ask the Saudi government to prevent the executions. Al-Sweikat and 13 others were arrested for attending 2011 demonstrations. He was held in detention in Daman, Saudi Arabia. And, it's, For those who don't know, Saudi Arabia does not have a very good track record as far as human rights go.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. How? What?
So this is not actually unusual.
A monarchy
yes.
abusing human rights?
Yeah.
What?
But this dude, the young man who's trying to attend Western, he was brutally tortured. They broke his shoulder. They denied him first aid, and that was with the intention of, like, that's what happens a lot of times in the Saudi, I'm doing air quotes, justice system, in order to get confessions. It's very draconian, medieval, if you will. But the interesting thing, like the precedent they're using, is the people are trying to get him exonerated. Is the fact that under the Saudi Arabia's own laws, a confession received under torture is not admissible. But, well, where are we at with Saudi Arabia internationally? Well, essentially, Donald Trump, gave a speech there a couple weeks ago talking about how, in very, very nice plight, it's not our job as the United States to, tell cultures how to behave and how to practice, which if it were actually directed at like any other Islamic country, it might actually sound kind of nice. Like, oh, he's saying America shouldn't butt in and tell them what to do. But in this context, we're talking about one of the most oppressive regimes in that part of the world.
Oh, man. It's getting involved in Cold War 2.0 is It's just great, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Totally.
obviously, like, our links to Saudi Arabia have been going on for a long time, since World War II. And, this is nothing new. We have cooperated with the Saudi regime for years. Going back to 9/11, most of the hijackers were Saudi. Saudi Arabia has had a history of funding Islamic terrorists like al-Qaeda and groups very much like them. Yet, why is it, we'll go invade Iraq, we'll go invade Afghanistan, who, the Taliban regime, while they were harboring, bin Laden, they didn't actually have as much, direct influence on al-Qaeda as, say, a lot of, wealthy Saudis did. So why, pray tell, have we never, done some shock and awe on Saudi Arabia?
It's because we're not super big fans of Iran either, which is the other major power in the Middle East. So we're sort of like hedging our bets, which is just dumb. Like, we can't be the shining city on the hill if we don't adhere to that kind of almost unrealistic standard, which, to be honest, is not an unrealistic standard. Going, hey, that's immoral, that's wrong, that's not good, stop it, or stuff's gonna happen. We've done it with Russia. We managed to, they invaded Ukraine. They still haven't given the land they've annexed up. Those sanctions, the international community has placed sanctions on them, and they're currently trying to fight against those sanctions in order to keep the land that they've grabbed. So we have a multitude of options for things like, you need to stop infringing upon people's human rights. You need to stop, if I remember correctly, Saudi Arabia's LGBTQ acceptance isn't that great either, if I remember correctly.
I believe that's also grounds for beheading.
Yeah. We're talking about a country that has so many human rights violations under its belt. Not that America can talk too much, but we're still in not speaking up or saying anything about it, especially coming out to protect people from these kind of injustices, is telling of exactly how America walks its walk.
That's very true. And, even thinking back, the previous administration was actually a little bit more open about Saudi Arabia, about criticizing them, and about, again, a lot of the reason former administrations have not worked with Iran is that Saudi Arabia sees Iran as probably the most principal institutional threat to their power in the region. So, given our financial ties with Saudi Arabia, which a lot of it has to do with oil and the petrodollar, there's been a lot of pressure on our state government, not the Michigan state government, but the government of the United States, to kind of approach Saudi Arabia with a soft hand, even when critical. Say, we don't agree with what you're doing. Don't offer sanctions, don't threaten sanctions. Don't threaten anything that could actually have an impact on Saudi Arabia's monarchy or economy. Just kind of give them a bat on the head. Of course, this current administration isn't even willing to do that. And
very true.
That doesn't bode well for the 17-year-old guy. I'm concerned. Like, yeah.
It is upsetting. And honestly, like, if America does manage to decide, or at least maybe not the current White House administration, but even if people in our federal government come out and speak out against this, honestly, it says one thing about America meddling in foreign relations and foreign policy and how other governments run themselves, but I think it also would speak to the whole. It would be a mark against Americans as inherently Islamophobic or anything like that. Like, this is a kid who wants to come to America to get an education and to, like, he's coming here for a reason. And he got stopped at the airport because he believes in literally what we practice here every day. If that's not American, I don't know what is.
Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, and, what I do find interesting though is, it was a bit more. There's recently a Senate vote on, because we've also been selling Saudi Arabia arms, tremendous.
Which gets we sell them the gross military surplus stocks that we have, and man, then somehow these terrorist groups get it. I don't know how that happens.
Well, that's a complicated story involving the fact that Saudi Arabia coordinates a lot of the time with our military, with our intelligence agencies, and that's almost a somewhat separate topic, except for okay, so you can kind of compartmentalize that. So there's the part of it where, like, our bombs, our munitions are involved in Saudi military campaigns, particularly right now against Yemen, which has been absolutely brutal. It's common knowledge that Saudi Arabia has been using our weapons to target civilians in that country. Or at least they have been so blasé about collateral damage that it's led to just an absolute human rights atrocity. But this is somewhat encouraging. The vote was fairly close. It was they got the arms, but in the Senate, it was a 47-53, which is the closest that vote has ever been. Basically, it's funding Saudi's military is something that comes up again and again. Every time we have to really look at the budget, or Saudi Arabia asks for an up increase. So, in large part, there were politicians from both parties who recognized that Saudi Arabia is a bad actor in the region. And while we've got a lot of deep state and economic ties to Saudi Arabia that are kind of preventing us from taking a firmer stance against their human rights abuses, there are just some politicians in Washington that understand what's up, and not only financially, but the fact that, their extremism is, that's like the foundational ideological bedrock of a lot of groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS, Wahhabism. So, again, there's actually politicians in Washington who are making the connection. It's like, why do we keep selling weapons to this country that is arming terrorist groups, that is committing human rights atrocities?
Why are we tipping over the first domino?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, will it's kind of hard to tell how pressure works inside of the Trump administration. A lot of it has to do with, Trump administration's primary concern when looking at any of these international issues is how is it going to financially be a benefit or detriment to Donald Trump's corporations or financial interests. And as we've seen recently, he's incentivized to be very buddy-buddy with the Saudis. He does have a lot of financial interests over there. So,
hey guys, you remember that time when the Trump fanboys and the Trump campaign spouted the narrative that if we elected Hillary Clinton, that the Saudis would be leading her by the nose because she's financially held and tied to them through the Clinton Foundation, blah, blah, blah.
And they're not
wrong. They're not wrong. But at the same time, it's a little bit pot calling kettle black over here. It's a little... y'all need to take a look at the guy that's in office right now.
Yeah, and I just got done reading Naomi Klein's new book, No It's Not Enough. And she makes a really interesting observation about the Clinton Foundation. And it's that, the kind of financial influence that was a legitimate but big concern during the campaign about how these large donations from oppressive countries like Saudi Arabia, what does that mean in the larger context? But at least they had a cover of it's a philanthropic organization, whereas that exact same conflict of interest that people were concerned about with Clinton is happening just absolutely openly with Trump. Of course, that kind of goes back to the greater point of it's Trump is what happens when you take decades of privatization, corporate worship, and neoliberalism and just rip its mask off. It's this gross little orange goblin. But
if only it was that easy.
Yeah. Why can't life be more like Scooby-Doo? Yeah.
What? I was...
Donald Trump! Oh, I would have gotten away with it, too.
If it weren't for you meddling kids and your dang dog, too.
Your dang dog.
Actually, it would be more like, and I would have gotten away with it, too, if it wasn't for you meddling kids and your stupid dog, too.
Yeah, your stupid dog, yeah. And then they bring Donald Trump to jail, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, no, we can't do anything until he's guilty of treason." So he can be guilty of all this other stuff, but
anyway, at least to cap this off, anything within our geopolitical ties to Saudi Arabia is going to be a tangled mess. Everything that we've done anywhere in the Middle East has been a rather tangled mess. And I think it would be a step in the right direction for America to start at least positioning itself to really start scolding Saudi Arabia, if not beginning to pull away and cut ties completely. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But I hope and pray for this guy, for this kid, that he's going to be all right, and I hope that these petitions do something.
Yeah, if you're interested in signing this petition, it's at actreprieve.org.uk. You can also find a link to it on the article. And the MLive article is called "Groups Rally to Stop Beheading of Prospective Western Michigan Student." And
we'll also link it in the doobly-doo.
We will link it and the doobly-doo. And I'm not sure who Western has contacted, the critical national political figures. But
someone who doesn't want to get their name involved this early.
Yeah, but I would say if you're concerned about this, you contact them too. Phone calls do work. It's a large reason why we are not under the AHCA at this moment. So, call if you're concerned about this. You can call Fred Upton. You can call our state reps. There have been situations, especially with this one. If you get enough bipartisan support, some might be able to happen. And for this dude's sake, I really hope it does. Ideally, he makes it here to Western. We can all throw him a huge party. Be like, yay! You didn't get your head chopped off by an oppressive Islamic fascist regime. I'll just give him some pop or a water, depending on
a celebratory refreshment.
A celebratory refreshment.
A celebratory refreshment,
yeah.
And
I was saying is I guess it depends on like what sect of Islam you have. You might not be able to drink one of our delicious craft beers, but
a celebratory refreshment. There's nothing.
Refreshment.
Everybody enjoys a celebratory refreshment.
Yes, that is true.
I'm going to keep saying it until it sounds ridiculous.
Celebratory. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and have some celebratory refreshments. In the meantime, don't change that dial. We got some more of the establishment's BS to call out in just a few minutes. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Keep your dial locked.
WIDR is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
Dozens of DJs, thousands of CDs, one glorious noise. 89.1 FM, WIDR. When the mode of the music changes, the walls of the city shake. What is Birdland? As Louis Armstrong might say, if you gotta ask, you'll never know. Birdland is a famous jazz club in New York, which over the years has hosted all the top talents, from Miles and Train to Joshua Redman and the Bad Plus. Birdland is also the name of WIDR's Sunday Jazz program, on the air since 1983. Join me, DJ Verve, as we take a weekly journey through this music called jazz, in all its many forms. On a typical show, we might go anywhere, covering the music's rich history in the past decades, through the top performers of today, and those visionaries working to shape what the music becomes. Every Sunday from noon to 4 p.m., let DJ Verve take you on a musical trip to Birdland.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, gonna go talk about a little bit more of the foreign policy stuff.
Everybody likes foreign policy.
Oh man,
it just gets everybody going. Oh, that foreign policy. Oh yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah, me, it's like, ugh. Like, angry, like, existential angst. It's like, oh, living in an empire really make one feel, I don't know if the word is guilty or just PO'd or whatnot. But
I guess it depends on how nationalistic you are.
I don't know. A lot of people probably be like, why'd you use the term empire? And it's like, well, you compare it historically to things like Rome and Britain. Oh, okay, so anyway, I wanted to bring this up, and I think it kind of ties well into what we were just talking about. And this is something we talk a lot on the show. Like, there is no longer functionally an anti-war party. There's no anti-war sentiment anywhere in mainstream politics. And nothing exemplifies it quite as well as this article from Forbes. By the way, it's more like a kind of a conservative-leaning economic magazine. This is published on the 14th of July. 60%, 60%, that's like 2/3, just saying, of House Democrats vote for a defense budget even bigger than Trump's. Okay, so the article goes on to say the single biggest section of the discretionary portion of the budget is military spending, and I'll just add it's traditionally hovers around 50% of our national budget. That was the status quo during the Obama administration, and it's going to be increased under Trump's. So, for years, the Pentagon has been incapable of fiscal responsibility, and again, this is a critique from an economically conservative point of view. This is a body that, according to news reports last fall, tried to hide $125 billion in wasted spending over a 5-year program. It's the only agency in the entire federal government still unable to pass a financial audit. And it's handed the largest check even as the Cold War is long over. No other country has our military power, and major new weapon systems have been outright disasters and money sinks, like F-14. Billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in this fighter jet that is really not needed, doesn't work. It goes on to say big companies that make billions of dollars a year shovel contributions at congressional representatives because it's a great investment. All that income only required $11 million in 2016 donations with, okay, call that return on investment. That's between $11 million to all the members of Congress and the Senate. Now, Luke, if you were to spitball it, so traditionally in the mainstream narrative, it's the Republicans are like the pro-war party, Democrats are supposed to stand for like diplomacy. What portion of those donations would you say go to Republicans?
Oh man, I read this article actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I actually read this article while I was at work earlier today. Just, give it a good through. Mm-hmm. The majority goes to Republicans, but not an insignificant amount of it hits the campaign donation pocketbooks of Democrats. Mm-hmm. Like, what is it?
38%.
Yeah.
So nearly a 60-40 split. And, if I just editorialize a bit, something you see again and again. I mean, what was the one time that Democrats actually heaped praise on Donald Trump?
Oh, when he bombed Syria.
When he bombed Syria.
Yeah, when he bombed Syria. It's like, oh, look at this presidential action. He's dropping bombs on an airport. Yay!
Yeah. As we later found out, there was a journalist who actually discovered that it was not a chemical attack from Assad. It was a traditional bomb that exploded near some potent chemicals like chlorine. And that's why basically there's this toxic cloud that people died from. And it was very gruesome. But there wasn't any sarin used. Sarin is not visible and it's odorless. Whereas this toxic gas cloud smelled like chlorine and it was a visible cloud. So the accusation that it was chemical weapons was unfounded. But and this is actually I'm thinking back to an article I read on the program a couple weeks ago. But it basically talked about how like our president launched that missile as a very knee-jerk reaction. His own advisors told him at the time, there's no proof that it's sarin, that's chemical weapons. But essentially, like, he saw the pictures and guess what? Our president is kind of an impulsive guy. I don't know if anybody told you that.
Oh, you mean he did what reactionaries do?
Yeah. He saw the pictures of the beautiful babies, and he just had to launch those beautiful Tomahawk missiles. Was it Brian Jennings or the beauty of our weapons? Like,
oh God. Goodness.
Oh yeah, and some MSNBC anchor salivating over like the glorious beauty of our weapons. I'm basically this undertone like he was getting an erection behind his desk. So
I'm over it, man. Like honestly. Like, this is where, again, a large portion of my criticism of Democrats comes down to this. 38% of these donations go to Democrats. Like, when we hit Democrats on being pro-war, this is why.
Yeah.
This is why. Like, we already have an overinflated... Our military is overinflated.
Oh, yeah.
It's so overinflated. Like, honestly, we can save money just by not being in places we don't need to be in. Like, we can close our bases in Germany. We can close our bases in Europe. We haven't been needed in Europe in ages.
Yeah.
They're doing an okay job. You know, the European Union, it's not perfect. Nobody's going to call it perfect. But it's operational. They're looking out for one another, and they know that, well, at least before Trump rolled along, they knew that America had their backs no matter what. When we start talking about like our overinflated military budgets, they get so much money they don't know what to do with it. They literally don't know what to do with all the money they receive. And it's to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if there are at least a couple. I would not be surprised in the least if a couple of the top brass were skimming some of that and doing something with it. Or even maybe not the top brass, maybe mid-level people. I'm being completely speculative. None of this is founded in any kind of fact or reason outside the fact that the military budget is bloated to the point where we can't keep track of it, and they haven't been keeping track of it. Because again, it's one of our governmental agencies that continuously fails audits.
And, another part of it, too, is it goes... I mentioned that failed fighter jet.
The one they're still dumping money into.
Yeah. A large part of that, and I'd recommend anybody interested in the way military bureaucracy funnels into this topic. There's a great book called National Security and Double Government. And it really talks about how a lot of the expense within the military-industrial complex is it's out of self-interest. It's out of military personnel that want to keep their programs going, regardless of whether it's strategically necessary or actually important for our national security. You could do a lot of the same things that are actually necessary for a military to do with a much smaller, more nimble force. Also, let's be frank here. We've got military bases all over the world. No other military in the world does that. I think, Germany's got a base, a couple bases here and there, but we've got hundreds of bases all over the planet. If there's a sense that we are still maintaining this role as the world's military police, that is correct, because we are. And that is a role that, even poll average people, Democrats, Republicans, nobody is comfortable with us having that role anymore. But, what it really stems from is it's not only that we are the military police for the world, we are the military police for much of the world's economic interests. And, this isn't only speaking about oil, but it's talking about shock politics and how, America, our military goes in, exploits a crisis, sometimes creates that crisis, and financiers will go in to exploit it. Baghdad,
quote, we should see Iraq as an investment opportunity.
Exactly.
Thanks, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
That one's never going to get old.
Yep. And, under Bush, the way they reconstructed their economy was in a crippling, let's privatize everything, rent-seek the economy of an already debilitated country. You wonder why people don't like America. And that's the functional reason why, is we use our military to financially exploit. And this is not new. A lot of people think this has just been happening since the War on Terror or, in the last couple years. No. Go back to, CIA. Its history of military coups in South America. Pinochet is a great example. That was a very socialist, Bernie-esque politician who got elected down in South America. I'm getting the names mixed up. But essentially, there's a deep history of us going down in places like South America and deposing leftist dictators to replace them with right-wing authoritarians to protect and entrench corporate interests. This goes back all the way to the Spanish-American War. I would highly recommend anybody pick up Smedley Butler's War is a Racket. And he talked about how that's General Smedley Butler, and he talked about how he was basically my role, as I really began to understand it, was I was a hired goon for the United Fruit Company. So this is a legacy that goes back decades, over a century. And one of the problems is as much as I talk about how our government is complicit in that imperialism, most Americans don't really dig into that. We are in the box that they want us kept in. Again, both sides are working to keep this empire entrenched. And, just to give you some perspective, so the DOD's budget under the Trump presidency, they wanted $639.1 billion. The House just passed a $696.5 billion defense bill. That's almost 700. That's 60 million more dollars than they originally requested. And just break down the numbers. So 8 Republicans voted against that bill. 227 voted in favor. And with the Democrats, 117 voted for the bill and 73 voted against. So that's a majority. 60% of the Democrats voted for this military increase. That was even more than what Donald Trump wanted.
Yeah. I mean, all we have to do is look at take a look back at Star and take a look back forward to Star Trek, and the 34th rule of acquisition: war is good for business.
War is good for business. That's right.
Of course, I really wish that at least the Democrats would come around and start following the 35th rule of acquisition. Peace is good for business.
Please do. There are ways for America to make money that are not based on perpetual warfare. But one of the biggest problems, like even a lot of our progressive politicians are still very, what's the word? Nationalistic in the sense that, their progressivism doesn't extend outside of our country's borders to these countries that are getting droned and pillaged. Like, Elizabeth Warren's a good example. So, in the confirmation hearings for Mad Dog Mattis, who, by all intents and purposes, has done things in Afghanistan that would make him a war criminal. He's made statements talking about how it's fun to go down civilians who has unmitigated collateral damage. Now, what does Elizabeth Warren, the progressive champion, ask Mad Dog Mattis when he's getting confirmed? She asks him questions about a military supply factory in her state and whether their funding is going to be secure in the near future. I mean, let's go even further, and Bernie Sanders, who I will give credit to, is certainly the least hawkish Democrat that's run in some time.
But he's not a Democrat.
Well,
he's not a Democrat. That's why he's not a Democrat.
The least hawkish person who has run for president as a Democrat in some time.
I don't know why people gotta harp on that so much.
Yeah, you get talking to some of these centrists. It's like, oh my goodness,
he's not a Democrat.
But so even Bernie though.
Yeah,
he, a lot of the time when he was talking about how are you going to pay for these programs, the one thing I kept screaming at my TV, it's like, take it from the military budget. Like, you could cut our military budget in half and we'd still have the biggest military in the world. Yeah.
I mean, what is it? Our military budget is our discretionary, not even the total military budget, i.e. the money that goes to the military no matter what, one way or the other. Like, nope, this is the military funding. This is going to go towards the military. Our discretionary budget, the money we get to decide what to do with. Our discretionary military budget is bigger than the next 10 military budgets combined. And this is a point I love to hop on. I'll hop on it till the end of days, until the button is broken, and until it's not that way anymore. 8 of the next 10 militaries that could potentially equal our military spending, 8 of them are allies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what do we need this huge military budget for? Why do we need this when we could take some of that money and put it into healthcare? When we take some of that money and put it into NASA, which by far is one of the largest economic driving factors that the U.S. government has ever made, because every dollar put into that program and put into science generated something like $2 worth of economic revenue?
Yeah, I mean, that's actual trickle down. That's when money is put into research and development, and that goes to like private corporations, and they can use those inventions and those advancements to accelerate the economy. But
the point being, though, is as long like we already have the largest military budget in the world, and our left party voted to increase it even more. And I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that. And I don't know if it's. I'm sure. I'm proof positive that not all of it is because of these kinds of donations from the military-industrial complex. Certainly, that is a significant factor. I also think part of it is that Democrats themselves have bought into their own spin. Like, Democrats buy into their own spin. They've bought into the narratives that they want to believe. They get propagated on the mainstream media, whom they look at as a trustworthy source, but they have their own agendas in the first place. They're caught up in the national narrative without actually taking a look, sitting down, taking a look at the hard facts. Because when 60%, if the 60% of Democrats who voted to increase that budget in the House, if every single one of them received dollars from the military-industrial complex for that vote, they probably could not have received that much, which is a huge return on investment for these companies that rely on continual war to turn a profit.
yeah, and that's just, think of how distressing that is from a moral perspective. Now, I haven't done this yet, but I mean, you could go to opensecrets.org and you can find out very easily, like, which one of these congressmen and women and senators are getting money from, civil defense contractors, etc. And yeah, go find out how much perpetual warfare is worth to them. How much did it cost to get that done? And again, maybe there's like some economic interest in their home district, but it's similar to when I was at the Line 5, when we were trying to get the county commission to push Line 5. One of the arguments that was made, this is Stephanie Moore was talking about one of her constituents and how they actually work for Enbridge. And, her bottom line was going to be about, like, whether, if they stop, dismantle the pipeline in the Mackinac Straits, no more oil goes through it, is that going to affect his job? And the point I made there, and, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a working class dude. I'm a dishwasher for a living. I grew up in the hood, hence the Hoodrat Strategist. And so did Luke here.
I mean, yeah. I currently unload inventory for a living. That's my job.
Yeah. So
I'm by no means a member of the liberal elite, and I never have any aspirations to join such group. Like, we need people from the hood, everyone from the hood, from the trailer parks, from like the backwaters of Louisiana. We need everybody to kind of come together and talk about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And neither of us subscribe to this sort of money influencing our politics kind of deal.
Yeah, and what I really wanted to put a fine point on with that too is, it's like, so what I was saying, what I ended up saying in the citizen comments was, particularly like line 5, when you're talking about climate change and oil, and especially with the oil spill that happened here a few years ago, I said, and this is something that all of these Congress people need to think about. All these senators need to think about. Get creative, because if the choice is between jobs or death and destruction, I think it's time to find a new option, a third way. You need to figure out, okay, maybe we don't need these military contracting jobs in my district, and that would save lives. It would save lives overseas, because like this military budget, like we were talking about earlier, that money goes to regimes like Saudi Arabia. That money goes into building drones that have terrible collateral damage rates. Especially now under the Trump presidency, where civilian casualties really just skyrocketed. You've got to make a third choice. Get creative. Say, maybe, what? Not military contracts, but let's try to get some green energy in my district. Let's try to get, some sort of, community-based jobs programs. Something else that is not at the expense of the rest of the world.
I mean, we could easily put a fraction of what we spend in the military right now into infrastructure jobs programs across the country, employ hundreds of thousands of people. It's government big spending. You know what? Sure, it's government big spending, but who else is going to build the roads? Who else is going to fix our bridges? Who else is going to update our infrastructure? We need these kind of big spend, one way or the other. We're looking at a government that is spending a lot of money simply because we're one of the biggest economies in the world. When we talk about big government spending, when we're talking about the federal government, we have to understand, of course it's going to be big government spending. They're not a local government.
Yeah.
Local governments, when we're talking about local governments, about how to fund a parade and making sure that our police officers get paid on time, making sure our teachers get paid, making sure that we have enough funds to maintain our parks and whatnot. Those are local budgets have far less operating power than our national government does, and our national government has so much spending power that it can make or break state economies.
Well, I mean, I guess the trade-off, though, is, all of those states and local municipalities, there'll be all this surplus military gear for their police departments to get.
Right? Yeah. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So, next time there's a BLM demonstration, or maybe somebody wants to protect some water, they'll have all the tear gas they need.
How many APCs does it take to break up a protest?
Yeah. I kind of mentioned that blasé and offhand, but that really strikes at it too. Democrats are supposed to be the party of diversity, inclusion, free speech, fight for civil rights, and they literally voted to fund an apparatus that has been or a military industrial complex whose equipment and tactics have been used to oppress people here at home.
Are being used.
I
would go so far to say are being used. We're taking a look at, if we take a look at our federal government's spending priorities, their spending priority is war. So what happens when there's no real war outside? Well, it becomes a war inside, which is what we've seen, especially since racial tensions have been strung higher, probably the most since the first civil rights movement. They have a perfect opportunity to use all of this surplus gear. It's crazy,
especially in an authoritarian presidency like Donald Trump's. Why are you giving, like, his military tenure? Why are you pumping more money into that?
We're dumping money into an apparatus that is actually a source of a number of ills, I think, for America, both domestically and globally. It's representative of a skewed set of priorities.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to keep up the discussion. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Allegan Humane Society is a non-for-profit, no-kill animal shelter that has been serving Allegan, Van Buren, and surrounding areas for almost 50 years. They are hosting their CARES Fund Drive and are over halfway to their $500,000 goal. Alvan can currently house around 30 dogs and 100 cats. Money raised from the CARES campaign will go to build a new shelter, which will expand this capacity by 20%. Alvan Humane Society has 20 dogs and 40 cats that are microchipped, spayed and neutered, and fully vaccinated, ready for adoption right now. To adopt a pet, donate to the CARES Fund Drive, or find out more, feel free to visit them on the web at www.al-van.org.
This is an open slot in the wider clock and could be filled with an underwriting announcement for your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the support page.
again, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So, wanted to pivot real quick to a local issue going on here in Kalamazoo. So, if you're not familiar with it, there's a program in the Edison Neighborhood called Ducks in a Row. What it essentially is, it's a program they run on recycled waste, and they teach kids in the Edison Neighborhood about farming, and they do it by introducing kids in the neighborhood to various farm birds. So, like, ducklings, chickens, etc. And this is a group, they've got support from schools and churches, a lot of organizations, associations, and local residents. But they've been facing a lot of continuous harassment from the city. There's numerous citations, tickets, fines, basically animals that technically you're not supposed to have in the city limits, but for their purpose, it really shouldn't be a problem. And just to give you a sense, this is happening to a local activist I happen to be friends with. And this all started, he was particularly local at a county commission meeting about Line 5, and the very next day, animal control showed up to try to take his ducklings. And, now he's being faced with fines and the threat of arrest. And there is going to be an event coming up on July 25th, and it's for basically trying to get the community to rally around this for basically a call to dismiss the charges against the Ducks in a Row program. And there's this image up on the event that said, "Busted, facing multiple charges for showing kids ducks." How terrible. What a monster, Luke, really.
Sure is.
Yeah.
How dare he introduce our young ones to the wonder that is nature.
Yeah. So we don't have a physical location. It's the city commission, sorry. So, here's some things that, like, if you think this is bad, there's a couple things you could do if you'd like. The event on Facebook says call for dismissal of charges against Ducks in a Row. You can always look that up. And this is for his pre-trial, which is going to be on July 25th. So if you can physically make it down there, check out the event. You can ask more specifically. I believe that would be down at the courthouse. There's also a number, the prosecutor's office, 269-337-8185. And, essentially, you got to make sure, like, what it looks like to me is, one, they're kind of harassing a local activist for being as vocal as he is. Because, a lot of people, it's these kind of fines and charges, for the most part, their enforcement is kind of like as long as it's not a huge nuisance, the neighbors don't care, the police generally don't care. But, he's Mr. Chris Wamoff is really kind of made a lot of people in the city government anxious. So, I don't have any phone calls to prove, like, we're going to go after this guy. But there
are no tapes.
It is very dubious. And, especially for any other activists who are vocal and challenging the city government, such as myself, But I think it's important to, one, stand up and make sure that this kind of legal intimidation doesn't go on, and also the actual program itself. There's a lot of merit to that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to get in on. It's like I just disagree with laws and regulations that stifle urban farms, I don't think that's right. I don't. Urban farming is number one as far as cost of food goes, and food deserts. It's hard to get locally sourced fresh food in a city. It's also really hard to have interactions with animals that are not cats or dogs or gerbils or anything that could be considered a house pet in a city either. So, like, exposure outside of a zoo. Mm-hmm. And programs like this do have serious educational benefit, as well as being a public good. Programs like this get people interested in gardening. Programs like this get people interested in veterinary medicine. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm not sure. This is a case where regulations, I disagree with them. Simply put. Because if you're going to stifle things, if you're going to stifle educational programs and programs that encourage things like urban farming, you're only encouraging the continued decay of inner cities. You're only encouraging the continued disenfranchisement of people who were born into urban settings and can't get out, especially in impoverished urban settings. Like, this is one of those things that, like, I see things like ducks in a row as connections to the wider world that help us understand the world outside of what we've already lived. It's also something that empowers communities. And I think having the city government come down on something that empowers a community is just, I think it's wrong-minded.
It really is. And, you know, kind of zooming out, this reminds me of a discussion I had with Jessica Martin about 2 months ago, when I had her on the program to talk about Monsanto, and she's a bit of a kind of an expert on, like, the rural areas around Kalamazoo, and we were talking about how, like, you know, these kind of regulations, not necessarily explicitly here in the local level, but these have also been, like, enacted throughout the state. That makes it very hard for small farmers to compete with larger factory farms. And, you know, she's told me, like, a lot of these rules and regulations that get put through are there to benefit larger farming conglomerates. And, you know, granted, I think, like, the motivations here were a little bit more localized, but at the same time, it's part of a concerted and larger effort we see throughout the district and throughout the state, where, you know, people trying to control their own resources, control their own food, is stifled with bipartisan government regulation. You know, like, there's been Republicans around the state that enact these kind of policies, which is, one, a complete betrayal of their whole commitment to small government. Of course, you see that a lot with many Republican policies. And again, you know, also a betrayal to a lot of the people who vote, you know, Republican, or even, like, vote. This is really a betrayal of both of their values, because, you know, you're talking about.
It's a betrayal of grassroots America.
Yeah.
And neither political party can really survive without grassroots America. Hands down. Mm-hmm. Grassroots America is the base.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, you know, particularly, like, neighborhoods like Edison, you know, it's not easy for people to get directly exposed to either that information or, you know, like, how, you know, these farm animals, you know, like you were saying, Luke, you know, without that kind of direct education you get from programs like this, it's all this very abstract idea. People don't understand where their food comes from. By the time any of us get it, well, not any of us, but by the time most people get their food, it's been processed so much, and it's gone through so many channels from producer, from farmer, producer, supermarket to your table, that for most people, like, it might as well have come from a wizard. And
hashtag bring back butcheries.
Yes, yeah.
Hashtag bring back bakeries.
Yeah.
Hashtag bring back groceries.
Bring back groceries, please.
Kill the supermarket. Honestly, kill the superstore.
Mm-hmm.
Kill the superstore.
Yeah. And again, it's part of a wider effort. It's like, locally sourced food is a threat to big food conglomerates, to stores like Walmart, and even just Meyer, because they make money by like importing their food, sometimes from as far away as like Washington State, when our agriculture can produce similar foods, but not at the wholesale prices that they demand. So a lot of times these ordinances are not to, because one of the things they dinged up with Chris is like these ducklings were violating a noise ordinance. Now, you actually go back to an episode of the Hoodrat Strategist show where he brings the duck. He actually brought the ducklings into the studio with him, and you can hear some chirping, but
I don't know. I think whoever filed that complaint about that particular violation probably should have gone to Ducks in a Row to hear exactly how loud ducklings can be.
Yeah, but it's part of the way it's written in the law. That these animals are loud and a disturbance to the peace. So, oh man. So again. If that's something that really grinds your gears, and again, I think this is a bipartisan issue because, really, they're impeding our right to enrich our neighborhoods, and they're impeding on my friend Chris's right to have these very harmless, non-disturbing animals in his backyard. So, again, that's the 25th, and that's when his court case is going to be. And if you want more information, you can go to the Facebook event. We're about 5 minutes out, so I think I'll cap off the show by talking about some of the important events coming up over the next week for all of you would-be activists out there. So let's see. Friday... Oh, no. So on Saturday, July 22nd, and I might be making it out to this myself. I really need to call my friend in Detroit, but it's State of Emergency, Michigan's elections, and that's going to be talking all about election integrity here in Michigan. So the description is like, are you tired of Jim Crow election? Let's fix the flaming hot mess known as Michigan's elections. Come to the Voter Justice Conference, and it's free, and they're going to be talking about election integrity, gerrymandering, ballot initiatives, such as cannabis legalization and Line 5, the Flint water crisis, reparations, and the whole concept of emergency management. Anyway, that's going to be in Detroit on Saturday from 8:30 in the morning till 5:30 p.m. And it's at 440 Burroughs Street, Suite 100 in Detroit, Michigan. Also coming up tomorrow, if you want to meet one of the congressional candidates, David Benak is going to be in Plainwell doing a town hall. He's one of the Democrats running. That's going to be at 381 8th Street in Plainwell. And There's also a couple of really important things coming up next week that I would be remiss if I didn't mention. Sunday, the Socialist Party of Michigan is doing a Wendy's protest action. That's going to be in East Lansing in support of farm workers' human rights, which actually we were kind of just talking about. But they go on to say the reason for their this action and this boycott against Wendy's is they refuse to join the Fair Food Program, but they've stopped buying tomatoes from Florida since the implementation of the FFP there. Rather than support an industry setting new standards for human rights, Wendy's took into tomato purchases to Mexico, where workers continue to confront wage theft, sexual harassment, child labor, and even slavery without access to protections. Wendy's stands alone as the last of the 5 major fast food corporations in the country to refuse to join the Fair Food Program. And that is going to be Sunday at 1 p.m. And it's going to be at the Wendy's location at 1000 Trowbridge Road in East Lansing. And also, I believe if you're interested, the Socialist Party is doing their state meeting that same day at 3335 East Michigan Avenue in Lansing, Michigan. Also that day, on Sunday, July 23rd, remember the Kalamazoo Fight for the Straits. This is going to be in Battle Creek. And it's in regards to the Enbridge Line 5 disaster that happened several years ago. It's going to be at Historic Bridge Park, 14930 9 Mile Road, Battle Creek, Michigan. Excuse me. And let's see. On Monday, July 24th, there is going to be a healthcare rally in Bronson Park at 5 p.m. There's also going to be a rally in Lansing at 4 p.m. Regarding Medicare for All. So the single payer, as we were talking about earlier. And also at 7 p.m. that day, there's going to be a Facebook Live town hall with Eponine Garrett, who's also running for Congress. That will be at her Garrett for the House Facebook page. And also 7:30 p.m. in the First Presbyterian Church of Lansing, there's going to be a gubernatorial forum with all the Democratic candidates for Michigan governor, focusing on LGBTQ and women's issues. And that's going to be at the First Presbyterian Church of Lansing. So, all right. Well, that's our show. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Every Wednesday, 5 to 7. All y'all out there, keep fighting for truth, keep fighting for that revolution solution, and we will see you next week. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo.
Out of gas, out of time, we want